Welcome everyone to the Hurting Humanity channel. If you weren't aware, Donald Trump deliberately held a rally in New York City at Madison Square Garden on Sunday. And when I say deliberately, it's of course because of the fact that people out there are being fed this information that in 1939 in Madison Square Garden, a massive Nazi rally occurred. So naturally, of course, when the media is creating this image of someone into a fascist Nazi and comparing him to Hitler, it makes perfect sense, right, for Donald Trump to book Madison Square Garden right before the fake election, because of course he has no self-awareness, right? Now this is how they work you into a deep hypnosis. They work people into a frenzy. The left and the right, they have created this illusion or this perception of what each side is, right? Republicans have been built up as racist, even if there's black people who are Republican. They've been built up as racists in the mind of the Democrats. And the Democrats, of course, have been built up in the mind of the Republicans as these completely insane, perverted people. And this really is hypnotism 101. Because, again, if we didn't have the technology that we have now, this wouldn't be working the way that it's working, because people are constantly getting fed media, whether it's controlled alt-right media or communist Democrat media. So if you haven't seen, the headlines are things like this: racist rally in New York City, right? And you would think that Donald Trump would say, hey, if we're going to go to Madison Square Garden with all the stuff that's out there, if I'm trying to actually get votes, with all the stuff that's out there about a Nazi rally from the 1930s taking place in Madison Square Garden and the comparisons between me and Hitler, maybe we should tone it down while we're speaking at this rally and not use things like racial undertones or just flat out racial comments, right? Because then people wouldn't probably vote for me. But he knows that this isn't about getting votes. This is about working people into a psychosis. And that's what you're living among now. If you go out into the physical world and you talk to people out there in the physical world, not on the internet, in the physical world, they are getting worked into this hypnosis. I'm sure you've driven by people's homes. They have huge banners, F Biden or Donald Trump, MAGA flag. I mean, these people literally think that they're a part of something, that they're a part of a movement. This is nothing more than a massive mind control experiment that's being done, and it's working. And we're all seeing it work around us, which is why, again, they want people like us silenced, because we have the ability. And I say we because I say everybody out there who thinks the way that I think on this channel, which is that the left and right is completely controlled. That is a narrative that they don't want out there and they won't allow to be out there. So you would think that Donald Trump would tell everybody, hey, we got to be extra careful about what we talk about here, because the media is using the talking point of the 1930s Madison Square Garden Nazi rally, which of course you're only finding out about a 1930s Nazi rally because they want you to find out about it, because they put that stuff out there so that Democrats start comparing this rally to that one. And then, of course, conservatives say, well, we're not really racist, until you actually listen to some of the stupid speeches that are given and how they're working people up into a frenzy, and even bring Hulk Hogan again out from his coffin, wherever he's been hiding. All of a sudden, Hulk Hogan is getting run out with the Republicans because they're trying to use this white nationalist, pro-America type of mindset here. And people don't realize how bad they're being messed with. I mean, that's really what's going on here. Is they're just messing with people to the upteenth degree. Like, we didn't think that any of their mind control experiments could get this insane, but it is. And remember, before I play for you the clips from this rally, which of course, you have people talking about Puerto Rico and little gestures. You have a guy waving a crucifix up in the air, saying all sorts of insane things and saying all sorts of things to just work people into hysteria, calling Kamala Harris the Antichrist, the devil herself. Hulk Hogan going on stage talking about how he doesn't see any Nazis around him. I mean, they want these talking points out there because this is how basic mind control works. And the more they keep doing this stuff, whether it's real or not, whether you see conservatives who are really Nazis or not, they're literally creating this illusion in people's mind through the mind control. And the Republicans are playing into it too, because they're out there and they're doing stuff like I'm about to show you. And anybody who sees this would say, yeah, it's a little out there. It's just very cringy, to say the very least. And remember about mind control before I show you this, because I know the conservatives out there don't want to give credit to the actual CIA or to the actual government when it comes to mind control experiments, because they want to believe that they're actually awake. They mastered mind control so well that we all need to pay deeper attention to Operation Mockingbird, to MK Ultra, to all the mind control experiments that they've done throughout the last 100 years or so, because they've mastered it. And they've mastered it so well that when you look at the conservatives, you should sit there and you should say, wow, this is how well they've mastered it. Then you look at the Democrats and say, wow, this is how well they've mastered it. They've convinced a side through basic repetition and mind control that kids should be castrating themselves. Then on the other side, they've taken conservatives and they've convinced them that the deep state is real, which it is, which we've all always been yelling about, but not really called the deep state necessarily. They've created this illusion, right? This perception of who it is and who's responsible. Yet these people still believe they know what's going on and that they can vote and change what's going on. And they don't realize that they're deep in the hypnosis as well. Here are some of the things that were said at Trump's Madison Square Garden, quote unquote, Nazi rally.
Won't show my story or won't back Donald Trump. I love you, Donald. God bless America and God bless the United States of America. USA, 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 USA. Criminal migrants are gone. The gangs are gone. America is for Americans and Americans only.
And Trump maniacs, I don't see no stinking Nazis in here. I don't see no stinking domestic terrorists in here. The only thing I see in here are a bunch of hard-working men and women that are real Americans, brother.
There's literally a floating island of garbage in the middle of the ocean right now. Yeah. I think it's called Puerto Rico.
She is some sick that Hillary Clinton, huh? What a sick son of a The whole party, a bunch of degenerates.
Can you imagine Kamala Harris performing a random, kind, generous act? She is the devil, whoever screamed that out. She is the Antichrist.
Her and her pimp handlers will destroy our country. We need to slaughter this other people.
They're smart and they're vicious, and we have to defeat them. And when I say the enemy from within, the other side goes crazy. They are indeed the enemy from within. And
so if you were running a presidential campaign, now I'm not running any campaign at all, but I would think even if I was running a campaign in my town, in my school, say I was running for school president, class president, wouldn't you think if all of these perceptions were out there and comparisons to Hitler and the comparisons to Nazis and white supremacy, that the first thing you would do on the checklist is probably after they start talking about 1939 Madison Square Garden Nazi rallies, not go there. Secondly, even if you were going to go and you're going to say, fine, who cares what they say, we're still going to go. Wouldn't you go out of your way to check all the things that people are talking about? How many people on stage mentioned racial, talking about the border and how we're going to throw you out? How about the one guy? The guy said we need to slaughter these other people. I mean, at what point are people on the left or the right going to start realizing that they're getting worked? Like this is like being in a relationship with a psychopath. Okay, your political affiliation is what's causing you all this stress, all this anxiety. They're deliberately manipulating you. These people are in bed with each other. And this is more proof of that. Because anybody would have listened to the stuff that look, what do you think? They show up at these rallies like this one at Madison Square Garden and they weren't checking the script for what they were going to say? I mean, really? Like if you were going to read something in your high school on on the microphone at your high school, they would want to know what you're going to say. They wouldn't give you a hot mic at one of these rallies, especially with the tensions and the civil unrest that they're deliberately creating. They know what these people are going to say and they continue to work them. And then they scream stuff like slaughtering the opposition, which literally, you might hear that and think, well, he's talking about Kamala Harris. But people hear that and they think in their minds that they're talking about them because they're so affiliated with the political party. So they're thinking that this guy is speaking at this rally a week before the fake election and that he's calling on the people of the conservative party to slaughter the other side. And these are just little things that they do, little words that they use, little ways that they speak. And they start convincing these people of this stuff, and it's worked. It's worked because you see how each side looks at each other. And unfortunately for people like us, like I've mentioned a lot recently, we get lumped in with the conservative side because they have lunatics on stage holding up a crucifix and then throwing out words like Antichrist. So anybody who stumbles upon my channel who doesn't know my content or never heard me before, they'll immediately just stereotype me into MAGA. They'll be like, oh, he's a conservative. He's a Christian. Oh, he's a conservative. Oh, he's talking conspiracy. Oh, he's a conservative. This is all deliberately being done. Like, this stereotype mind control has been around for a while. I always think back to like The Breakfast Club, right? Everyone's like, oh, what a great movie. They were building stereotypes. Here's the jock, here's the nerd, here's the princess, right? Here's the dropout. They build stereotypes. And now they're doing this with political affiliation. It never was like this. People, who are younger don't realize it was never like this. You could identify a Democrat based on their glasses or how they dress, and you could do the same with the MAGA side. They're formulating and manufacturing human beings. That's what we're seeing going on. This right here is social engineering 101. So you hear all the lunatic talk, you hear people screaming about, yeah, they're destroying the country, but guess what? Both sides are destroying the country together. And that's, what's really hilarious about it is when you hear Donald Trump, he talks about how we have to defeat them. Because again, when you're in this entrenched in the left right, you look at it as if you're on a football team, you're on a basketball team. You look at it as if you're in a war with another country. This is what they're creating, right? This is all being manufactured. And Donald Trump said, we have to defeat them. And them, of course, in people's mind isn't we have to defeat Kamala Harris. We have to defeat people who vote for Kamala Harris. We have to defeat people who have the Kamala Harris flags in their front lawn. They're creating a civil war because it's the oldest motto in the book. Divide and conquer. If you're trying to bring America to its knees, you would need some type of a civil war, whether it ends up in bloodshed or it just ends up where they start herding people around to left and right states, blue and red states, is yet to be determined. But when Donald Trump talks about defeating the enemy, I think it's incredible that a week ago, he was at a dinner with these people like Chuck Schumer sitting by him, side by side, talking to him. Now, he's talking about defeating the enemy. What's he saying? Oh, defeat him at the ballot box. Now, they know that they could just say that. But then when you listen to their words and read between the lines and see how they act, they are doing deeper psychosis, much deeper psychosis on people than people give them credit for. Because most people don't want to look at themselves as being sucked into this thing. But Trump was just having dinner at that gala with all Democrats, people who have tried to throw him in jail, people who said that he's a criminal, that he's the next Hitler, and he's eating with them. Would you be eating with them? Would you be standing there with them? Would you be associating with them if you're speaking the way that the Republican Party speaks? Of course not. So the other thing to note as I talk about behavioral control is what actually occurred while this was airing on television. What occurred was that during his speech, they literally were cutting off his speech and fact-checking it. Now, people are going to see this at first, and they're going to say, well, this is utterly insane. But this is going to be the new normal. Because the more they start doing this through repetition, people are just going to become desensitized, and they're going to expect it. Kind of like underneath every video that I do for the most part, there's a blue fact-check box. Now, everybody who's listening to my channel, obviously, all of us look at it. I know a lot of you say it's a badge of honor. It's comical. It's comical to think that somebody would watch one of our videos and then click the fact check, but they know how this mind control works. So if somebody is completely asleep and they're hearing about weather modification for the first time, of course their brain is going to be like, whoa, what? They've never even thought of the notion of the government having the ability to modify the weather because it's never been taught to them in school. All they've heard are all these words and phrases like you can't control Mother Nature. So then they're like, wait a minute, this guy's saying they could actually do it. Let me listen a little bit. Oh, wait, here's the fact check box. And then boom, they get nailed with the real disinformation. So then they're automatically more likely to just dismiss what I'm saying because it's a lot to wrap your head around. Well, now, even though we know that the right is fully controlled, they're conditioning you into this new reality where they bring the Ministry of Truth on. Remember the Ministry of Truth narrative, the 1984 narrative, where they were hiring people in Biden's administration who were going to fact check people. And then, we're not really doing that. They're just quietly doing it. They're quietly doing it with how they're implementing it on YouTube. They're quietly doing it with how they're just popping up fact checks in the middle of this rally. CNN literally goes to fact check. Now, conservatives see this and they're like, oh man, that's out of control, ridiculous. But eventually, just like I talked about very early on in talking about all these topics, eventually the conservatives are going to call on Democrats to be fact checked. Just like conservatives called on Democrats to be canceled after a while, instead of saying, you know what? You're not allowed to cancel me. I'm not going to be canceled. They just accept being canceled. They left YouTube and went to Rumble. They listened to what they were told. They just went along with it, pretending like they were rebelling against it. and then calling on censorship for the other side. And that's how this works. You cancel each other out. But for those of you that don't know, here's a little clip from 1984 about the dystopian hell that they're trying to create, where literally everything is going to be monitored, tracked, and of course, everything's going to be fact-checked.
The saboteurs, Lewis and Siegel, were caught a few minutes ago in the neighborhood of Victory Square and have already confessed their guilt. As he was arrested, Lewis was heard to shout in a loud voice, "Long live Big Brother!"
6748 Smith W. Regulation 6040. Outer party members will always wear identification badges when going in public places.
Who are you?
6748 Smith W.
Where do you work?
In the Ministry of Truth.
Which department?
The Records Department.
What is your business in the people's area?
I had a headache. I thought if I got a little air.
When did you leave work?
1800 hours.
It's now 2200. Report tomorrow morning at 800 hours to Fort Administration.
What do you do, Smith? I revise history. That's an unfortunate way of putting it. What you actually do is to rectify speeches and wrongly reported incidents, isn't it? Yes.
So that's 1984, and now we're in 2024, and this is what appears in the middle of a Trump rally. They start fact-checking everything coming out of his mouth. Now, again, some people will look at it, they'll laugh, they'll be like, oh, that's not going to happen. And then when it starts happening over and over and over again, and it becomes more normal, like every other show, they start fact-checking things, then it just becomes your new reality. That's how this whole thing works. They just ease you into this stuff with no pushback. They go forward. They don't let you push back even if you try to, but there's too many people sucked into the left, right. So instead of pushing back, they're just going to call on Democrats being fact-checked, and then we're going to have to accept this as our new reality. Look at this.
A rally from Madison Square Garden with former President Donald Trump, where we are hearing scores of lies from the former president. He has come on stage and said a number of things that are just not true, starting with a number of things on immigration. He repeated his lies that there was no relief money for victims of the hurricanes in North Carolina and Florida and other states, because he claims that the government gave it all to migrants and that there was none left. That is patently untrue. FEMA had to set up a website to debunk that, and some people have not gone and gotten help that they needed because of those lies. He also repeated another lie that in Springfield, that thousands of immigrants were dumped in Springfield, Missouri illegally. In fact, the city website says that Haitian immigrants are there legally under the immigration parole program, and that they independently chose to move there. They were not sent by any program. Again, we have heard number of lies. He also started talking about the fact that he thinks Kamala Harris would put a draft in place. It's worth noting there is no active draft in place. He has also talked about the economy, when a number of economists have pointed out that the tariffs that Trump continues to talk about and want to put into place would harm the American economy and truly harm American consumers, who would see the prices of goods go up, and that there are real concerns about what those economic policies could lead to.
So again, the more they start doing stuff like this, repetition is the key. It's as simple as that. You don't need to study a human brain to understand that repetition is the key to mind control. You know why? You know how? In the easiest terms, how do you learn to tie a shoe, right? The first time you tie a shoe, I bet it's not the easiest thing that you've ever done in the world, right? But guess what? I bet the last time you tied your shoe, you don't even remember tying it. Why? Because of the repetition, right? It just becomes second nature. It becomes normal. Well, the way to do that is to just continually do it over and over again. And what they do is they start easing these things like fact-checking into our day-to-day lives, just like words like misinformation. How many people do you hear repeat the word misinformation and disinformation? 3-4 years ago, when they first said it, we were all laughing at the fact that they were even using terminology like that, because we were saying, well, how do you define it? How do you define disinformation or misinformation? Who's the source? Let's ask those questions. Well, we're telling you. Oh, well, that's not a source to us, right? Oh, science is a source, they tell us. Then they tell us that men can have babies. So then you say, well, I guess science isn't the source, right? Because chromosomes is basic science, basic biology tells us that people shouldn't be castrating themselves, right? Well, they change it as they go, because the source of truth is always them, no matter what they say. So they just kept saying misinformation and disinformation. I bet now, when you guys are out in public, you probably hear people repeat it. You hear people talk about it in different, avenues of life, right? It's not just about politics. You hear people talking sports on the radio or on television, and they say, oh, well, they said that he hurt his ankle. It was really his arm. That was disinformation. And it goes on and on and on, and it just becomes a word that's now part of your everyday life. And the fact-checking is the next wave that's going to be part of our day-to-day lives. They're going to do it on both sides. I guarantee you that eventually the Fox News and the conservative media starts fact-checking them. They'll make a big deal about it. They'll be like, can you believe that CNN fact-checked during it? Well, let's fact-check them back. Yeah, let's fact-check them back. Instead of saying, you know what? Who's responsible for this? Who's responsible for it? Let's hold them accountable. We want to see the CEOs of these corporations lined up, and we want to talk to them. We want to tell them, you keep manipulating people. You keep working people into a psychosis, getting their depression up, their anxiety up. You're going to be held responsible. Stop it now. And if they don't stop, well, then they're held responsible, however you want to look at that. Let's just say removing their power. So Trump holds the rally in Madison Square Garden, right? They put the seeds out there with that 1939 Nazi rally because nobody out there would know about it. Does anybody out there, do you hear, hey, in 1912, so-and-so had a pep rally over here. They obviously put that out deliberately. Why? So they could start working liberals into a frenzy that there's an actual Nazi rally going on in New York City, and they believe it. Then on the flip side, the conservatives were supposed to believe that they went up there with these speeches and nobody checked them. And they deliberately use terms, right? Hulk Hogan's using the word Nazi. Deliberately. This is seed planting. If you had basic psychology, if you understood basic human emotion, you wouldn't play into it. You would say, look, it looks, you wouldn't even bring attention to it. You wouldn't say, hey, this doesn't look like a Nazi rally to me, right? Then you cut to pictures people take outside of the place and it looks like a Nazi rally. All sorts of just absolute psychological tactics being used that these people are getting sucked into. And you're telling me Trump doesn't realize by saying, we got to stop them now. This is a fight against them. It's good versus evil. Somebody coming up on stage talking about slaughtering the opposition, right? You get the guy cracking jokes about Puerto Rico in New York City. In New York City? I mean, you're kidding me, right? Like nobody told him that nobody would probably laugh at the joke, and nobody did. Nobody did, but the point wasn't for the people in the crowd to laugh. The point was for the Democrat media to blast that out to Democrats so that their perception of a conservative or a Christian continues to get warped. And they automatically lump all of us into this. That's why the guy's on stage holding up a crucifix. That's why they're using words like Antichrist, God, Jesus, Satan. They're working people into this. They want them to think that this is the actual spiritual war going on. This is a facade that's going on. This is a war on your mind that they're creating. The spiritual war is real. It's real. And all these people involved in what they're doing are a part of it. And nobody can look at this rally, and conservatives will be like, well, it wasn't really racist, come on, it's a joke and this or that. I mean, how tone deaf could you be? If your objective is to gain votes, right? And that was your whole... oh, the voting's real. I'm going to go out there and just try to get people to vote for me. You wouldn't be behaving the way you're behaving. You wouldn't be saying the things that you say. Because all it does is just work division among us, if anything else. It doesn't get people to go and vote. It gets people more angry at one another. And that's the whole purpose of this psychosis that they're creating. And it's all going to come to a head. Because again, I can't emphasize this enough. Common sense logic tells us that whoever we're told loses. Because remember, how are we tallying the election? We're getting the results. I love how conservatives, you're getting the results from the election, from the media that you call fake news, right? Nobody thinks about the process, who's counting it, where is it, can we all monitor it once so we can make sure that they don't, I don't want you to think like that because their solution, of course, is a digital ID. So if you start thinking like that, well, then you're going to, kind of halt their plans to get a digital ID in place, right? But the media is the one telling you the results. Whether it's Fox or CNN, they put it on. One side tells them this guy won. One side tells them that guy won. Oh, it's going this way. It's going that way. And eventually, everybody settles on a result on the television set. And that's the result you're supposed to believe as reality. But the guarantee that they've already built up in your mind, because it's been 8 years of conditioning, is to deny the outcome. Because the stories are going to come. This state. They're coming down to one state. It could come down to one vote. It could come down to this little county. Oh my goodness, it could come down to the people who didn't vote. And then, of course, the PSYOPs will come in. oh, so-and-so says that they burned in a ballot box. We got a video on TikTok. Oh, what? Oh. And they work you and work you. And the side that we're told loses is going to deny the outcome of the election. And it's all going to hit the fan after that because they've been building up for it. And Agenda 2030, which some think is Project 2025, all these things are on the horizon. And it's going to take a massive, massive psychological operation to bring all these things about in America. And you could bet your bottom dollar that this is that massive psychological operation because people are invested. You can only pull off a psyop on people if they're emotionally invested. That's how they pull off all these events at schools, because people get sucked in. Because good people, obviously, 99% of people would not be okay with these events that happen at schools. And they couldn't even grasp the notion of their own government formulating it, creating it, using actors so that they could simulate these things and get you to submit your rights. Get you to say, I want civilians not to be armed anymore. I only want the government to be armed. Because they don't even realize what's happening because they get so sucked in emotionally. And it's understandable because nobody wants to see any of these things happen at schools. But the reality is that the majority of them don't actually happen. They don't actually happen. But they can't even grasp the fact that the government stages these things to strip us of our rights. It's too hard for them to realize because they're so emotionally invested in the stories that come out. Oh, did you know so-and-so was their first day of second grade? Oh, did you know so-and-so? And they get sucked into these things like they're watching a movie, and then they're like, well, it's not a movie. It's real. It's real. So that makes them care even more, right? And they're going to get sucked into this psychosis worse than any psyop we've ever seen because everybody I've seen has fallen for it hook, line, and sinker. And the alt-right is just as guilty as the communist liberal media out there. So Trump holds his rally. I mean, what a charade. They bring Hulk Hogan back out, which sums it up, like I said, at the RNC. The entire thing is like professional wrestling. That's what it is. And they're taking you on an emotional roller coaster. They're drawing you in by doing all these things that we shouldn't allow them to do, right? It's amazing if you think about the perspective that Democrats and Republicans have of each other. They don't realize that the same thing's being done to both of them at the same time, right? Think about it from the power to choose, your body, your choice. You don't want the government telling you what to do with your body, right? That's all the Democrats talk about, right? All they talk about is the Roe v. Wade, and it gets them all worked up. They're like, I don't want them to tell me if I could do this to my body or not, even though, we all know what it really is that they're doing, right? And then the other side with the vax, right? Oh, we don't want them to tell us to do this. And it's the same thing. It's just all it ends up being, if you think about it from both perspectives, is government overreach. And all people like me really want is the government to stand back, to move away, because they are meddling too much in our lives. Now they're meddling so much so that they're convincing people that fellow civilians are this, fellow civilians are that. They're just working a psychosis so deep into people's minds that it's becoming dangerous. And that's what they want, because they're doing this deliberately. I thank everybody for being here. I hope you're all doing well. God bless you and your families as always.